So right now we're going to go through how character art develops, or how you get to see what eventually becomes a cartoon, Clerks, even though you didn't really get to see it because it only ran for 2 episodes. But who better to navigate us through this process than Chris Bailey? Chris, how do you find the Silent Bob, the Jay, the Dante, the Randall, the cartoon versions?
The challenge of Clerks was to come up with a new style. There wasn't an established cartoonist that we could look at and say, oh, we want this particular artist style to adapt to our cartoon. So we really went back to the movies, and we just looked at them over and over again and tried to discern exactly, what was the essence of each character.
You're late.
What the hell are you doing here? I thought you were playing hockey at one.
The boss called. Arthur fell ill.
Why the shutters closed?
Someone jammed gum in the locks.
Bunch of savages in this town.
That's what I said.
Shit, if I had known you were here, I'd have come even later.
And then explored a range of cartoony, from flat Flintstone style to a little more realistic Batman style, and just see what resonated with all the people involved.
One thing we were always conscious of was, do they look like the people, but do you believe that they could fly into
right.
space?
We wanted to take advantage of animation and not just do one of those realistic superhero shows.
But in terms of the characters, basically it wasn't like creating something from the ground up, and as much as you can draw anything you want. These were based on people that we've seen already in the feature. So essentially you had to not just draw them, but caricature existing people. You couldn't create a Jay who was an Asian midget who had a spiky hair. We wanted to, and that was the original network note. But you have to do something that kind of calls to mind the actor who played that character in the movie. So the Jay cartoon had to look like Jay Mewes. The Dante cartoon had to look like Brian O'Halloran. Randall, Jeff Anderson.
Well, Silent Bob was the easiest.
Because he's
the
fat.
coat.
And it's always easy to draw the fat guy.
The fat guy with the big coat.
Right.
No, it was such an iconic character. I mean,
and I had
he doesn't
sympathy,
move
like
a
you
lot.
got the hat, the long hair, the beard.
Hat,
These are
the long
things
hair,
that
the
are
beard,
easy
the
to
coat.
kind of caricature, I'd imagine.
Right. The toughest one for me was Jay. And that's because you watch the movies, and it's very easy to get an impression that he's this bad guy. He's always up to mischief, and it's very easy to caricature him or draw him as this wicked character. But that wasn't him at all. It was very funny because no matter who we gave the assignment to, their first stab at the character was to draw him as some kind of malevolent witch.
Yeah, like he always had a pointy nose. And
Nose
I've always,
pointy
based on those drawings, looked back at Mewes to go like, how do you arrive at that conclusion? It's not like he has a very hooked pointy nose or a very jabby pointy nose.
But he
or
has
something.
very delicate features, and
like
I think,
a woman.
Which was your note, actually, early on. I remember
Which
that.
is
Well,
like,
yeah,
he kind of
well,
looks
you know,
like a
and you
girl.
were
You said he was a
you were-
beautiful, beautiful woman.
You were saying
that was your note.
Look, we'd hang up the phone after talking to you, Steve Silver, the character designer, and myself, and just go, "What's he thinking? This is like a bad guy. This guy isn't a pretty guy." But after the first table read where I sat next to Jay, I totally got what you're talking about.
Mewes is he looks and acts and has the vibe of a 4-year-old or
Exactly.
a 5-year-old.
Once we got that, we started younging up the design, and
that's
going.
when it really clicked.
Right. We gave him the little Bambi eyes. We gave him.
The
We
eyes.
started making the features smaller and smaller on this face,
Right.
and it just started looking more and more
When
charming.
you got the eyes, that's when it really
Started to
was
click
just
well.
nailed.
All of our characters can get the whites around their eyes for certain expressions, except Jay. Jay always has the little dot
Little
Bambi
dots.
eyes.
And even if he's screaming on the show, or even if he's shocked or anything like that, he never goes wide-eyed. So
still
Right.
always
The
looks
dots
his
just
wide
get
eye,
bigger.
yeah, the black
That's all.
dot kind of gets bigger.
Jeff was also difficult to do as Randall, just because he's a pretty. Why his face has a lot of character and is easy to do. He's a pretty average guy, and he's got an average build, and it's easy to make him look like a jock. Well, that's not Randall. And it's also too easy when you cross that line to make him a hick, and that's not him as well. So
That was a
so
big
making-
thing, which was we were trying to keep his intelligence alive in the designs, which was to somehow, can you draw someone that's sure of themselves? I know that sounds sort of like an abstract idea.
No,
but
well, we started
yeah.
looking at Bugs Bunny for that. Something about Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, with a lot of their cockiness is communicated by this little half-lidded expression and their chest out and their head back. they're always looking at you like there's something else going on in their mind.
Like
You
they're
ever-
smarter than you.
Exactly.
And which is weird because the Randall character in the show
Right.
sometimes winds up
Sometimes
being
he
the
is,
dumbest
but sometimes
character
he's
on
the
the
dumbest.
show.
But he always has the highest self-esteem.
He's a very confident
He's
character.
a confident
So
idiot.
the
He's
confidence
best
was
kind of idiot.
was the through line that you were able to kind of arrive at
Right.
what became our Randall.
Man, didn't you see Outbreak? One monkey almost wiped out an entire town and Kevin Spacey with the deadly Motaba virus.
That was a movie. This is real life.
You said the same thing about Jaws when we were kids.
Because you refuse to sit on the toilet.
Sharks swim in water. There's water in the toilet. I rest my case.
So Bob came first, I think, because he's such an iconic character, and then Dante.
Who's also very easy.
Yeah, Dante. Yeah, Dante came together so quickly.
Once
thing-
again, beard. Anyone I
Yeah, I
think
think
that
the-
has the beard is kind of easy
The
to
thing about
caricature.
Bob that it gave us was once we had Bob, you sort of hit on the whole geometric shape thing, which sort of allowed you then to go, well, if he's a circle, what's Dante? Dante's
Right.
a rectangle.
Well, there's something
which
else
did
too.
move us forward a lot.
And it was important for me that the show be easy to draw for the animators. And there's a certain language that's evolved over the last several decades, or since Walt Disney. A lot of that language were things that you guys didn't respond to positively, and that you felt like you'd seen it before, and you wanted the show to look fresh.
The show doesn't look close to the previous comic efforts that we had done, but we didn't want to do what we had done in the comics with Jim because that stuff seemed a little harder to animate.
Well, there were a lot of great things about the comic that I tried to incorporate, but you're right, you couldn't just animate those designs. A lot of the charm of those comics is they look like graffiti.
And also, he really excels at that thick black line,
Right.
which some artists really are big fans of, and that was something we definitely incorporated into the show. There was a thick black line to all of our characters.
And also the liberal use of black as a color in comics was something that we wanted to take advantage of. Jim does that as well as a lot of underground cartoonists.
Leonardo was a character that originally was going to be voiced by, and in one of the early records, it was voiced by Alan Rickman, until the network said they didn't like Alan Rickman. So we had to then go out, and we found Alec Baldwin. The notion was doing Lex Luthor and Leonardo, the arch nemesis for two guys that don't even know they have an arch nemesis. That's
He's
why.
very concerned with their actions.
Yes,
and their
throughout the
ability.
shows, he's always like, "Well played, Clerks," and they have no idea what he's talking about.
Mr. Leonardo is here to pose for a publicity shot for Fortune magazine.
Why are you posing in the pet store for Fortune instead of your own office?
All right. It's not fortune. It's for people.
And people want you to pose at a pet store?
Fine, it's for Pet Store Weekly. Well played, Clerks.
So, of course, initially we thought bald guy, but then we said, forget it. If we're going to have Rickman do the voice, let's go for Hans Gruber from Die Hard. So the initial designs were very Hans Gruber-like. But then Rickman saw them and said, I don't want to do Hans Gruber. You know, it's a part that like I enjoyed doing once, and I really don't want to keep being identified with it. So we started moving away from Hans Gruber and trying to find something else.
Yeah, he not only didn't want to do it from a performance standpoint, he didn't want the character to physically look like that. So we actually had like a 5'2" Ross Perot type
Yeah,
guy,
we're going
or
for
except
a
wide
little
shoulder.
guy.
I mean, he was energetic, but wide
He was
shoulders.
small. He was a little man. That was one design.
Right.
And then we went for like a very overly handsome guy. I remember that version.
Right.
With
like a
the very
Disney
smiley
hero. There was a one Leonardo looked like him. Very
Because of this, the
chest
J. Peterman. I think that's the design you're talking about. The J, what I called the J. Peterman design. Once Alec Baldwin came in, we went back to the original design. It just felt right.
And clothing-wise, we were able to push it also just by sort of, he's always wearing sort of a older style, more proper sort of, like you can imagine him wearing like frilly sleeves. Like
Right.
And Mr. Plug too came pretty quickly as well.
He was pretty
Mr.
easy.
Plug, well, sure, because he was modeled after Odd Job
Job.
from Goldfinger.
But that was another one that came really early, and it was like, we have this great model. Everything else is going to work because Mr. Plug is really funny looking.
Yeah,
In the initial art packs that we saw, Leonardo came very quickly and very fast and almost like it looks in the finished cartoons. Bob came next, then the interiors of Quick Stop and whatnot. But the characters would take a longer time because some of us were, very kind of like, well, this isn't it. This isn't working.
Right.
We kept pushing and pushing and pushing.
You know, it's funny, when we got the characters that hit, they were so simple, and the characters we struggled with tended to have more detail on them. In retrospect, is because we were struggling with finding the essence of who they were.
No further questions.